You're watching Your Trades the week ahead. We managed to gain in excess of about almost 1% for this entire week for both the Sensex as well as the Nifty, but it sure has been a volatile ride.
Yes, it's been a volatile ride, and it probably could be so next week because it's truncated with tons of results and a lot of large cap numbers as well. So, exciting week ahead.
Oh yes, managed to gain about almost 1.2%, although on Friday we did manage to garner some show of resilience. So what looked like, the start of a bad day finally saw some lost ground getting recovered. Nonetheless, it's been a sub 6,800 mark, which we celebrated this week. The gainers then this week have been the likes of Sun Pharma. The deal with Ranbaxy really sort of put shining stars in this month. Bank Nifty, of course, managed to gain about almost 2%, the futures that is. And then, of course, you had sectoral gains for the entire power space as well. The other Nifty gainers, they included the likes of NMDC, Ambuja Cement, Ultratech. Cement, of course, was one strong pocket. And Kotak Bank amongst the banking pack was indeed the top performer. On the losing side, Tech Mahindra, Hero MotoCorp, Dr. Reddy's, Lupin, JSPL, United Spirits. IT was the disappointing one, although on Friday IT saw a remarkable recovery.
Well, the mid-cap end of the market was very interesting because I think the PSUs really shone in this week gone by. So name a PSU stock and I think the stocks did very well for themselves the whole of this week. Be it a BEML, be it a Gujarat Gas, RCF did very well in Friday's session. A lot of infrastructure names, SR Port, GVK Power, etc. had fairly good weeks as well. Adani Group stocks and the ADAG stocks too. Very volatile week, but I think on the whole they did well. So Adani Enterprises, despite Friday's downtake, 18%, Adani Port up 7%, Power did well. And then ADAG, so Reliance Infra, Reliance Capital, etc. had a fairly exciting week as well. All in all, high beta did very well, but for the last day, which is Friday, wherein IT made a comeback. And interesting to see if this continues in the week ahead or no. To talk about that, let's get in two experts. Deven Choksi, MD of KR Choksi Securities. He joins us to speak about the fundamentals. And Sandeep Wagle, founder and CEO of Power My Wealth, joins us to speak about the charts. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining both of you. Sandeep, late Friday evening saw an uptick in IT, a downtick in banking. It's a truncated week. Next week, just a 3-day week. How would you approach trading?
Neeraj, I think we will have to take it... The same move should continue. We will have a one up, one down kind of a session. We just have 3 trading days. You said it right. This week was also truncated, and I don't expect 66.50 to be broken on the downside. I don't expect 68.50 to be broken on the upside. Now this may happen for the next week or probably even for 2. And till this range is taken out, I think we will have to play within this range, stock specific. And I would still say the bias is on the upside. There are corrections now. IT is coming back. Probably we may have an extended move. So nothing as far as I am concerned, not great thing happening. I think you'll have to pick your stock, choose the pattern and play stock specific. I think that is what I am looking at.
Deven, 10% for Sun Pharma this week. Not to forget Ranbaxy had a massive move too. How do you approach these two stocks now?
Well, Neeraj, I think these both companies remain fundamentally, I think, strong companies, particularly for Ranbaxy now, after having got the Sun Pharma's advantage to them. So, to my mind, I think both these companies are remaining fundamentally strong. Few reasons, of course, I think has been talked about. The first to file category that or the list I think the Ranbaxy is having, that is probably giving the visibility of about $200 million worth of profits for Sun Pharma eventually. So that is, I think, one good point that one could count on. And at the same time, I think the kind of NDA pipeline that the Ranbaxy is having, along with the market presence, including in the OTC market, probably all of them, I think, have come at a good deal to Sun Pharma. So to my mind, I think it's a long-term story. Maybe, I think, as we believe the management, I think they are talking about bringing down the cost structure to an extent of about $250 million. I think that could be over a period of time. But if that does happen, then in such situation, over a period of time, I think Ranbaxy could be, I think, a good bet to buy. Currently, it is available at an arbitrage discount of around close to 8 to 10%. So I think that would be, I think, again an advantage for the investor as far as the downside protection is concerned. So consider that as a long-term investment portfolio and stay invested for about 2 years in this company.
Interesting. So that's a long-term perspective. What are on the pharma stocks? These two at least, Sun as well as Ranbaxy. I think the other space that was in news the whole of this week was one, the PSU stocks, two, the banking names. Let's talk about banking really. But for slight sluggishness in Friday, some very good gains that came in for the PSU banks. Top gainers the last 1 month, PNB, BOB, SBI gain almost 20%. The Bank Nifty up over 2% this week as well. Devin, why this enthusiasm? Is it essentially buying these banks when they are sub book, maybe 70% or 80% of the book value, and hope for them to revert to the mean of 1%? Is that a trading move that's happening in banks, or is there a fundamental shift there?
Well, I think fundamentals don't change over a period of overnight. I think, and it would change over a period of time, of course, for sure. In case of banking stocks particularly, I think the main trigger out here is that if the economy is returning back to growth, then in such situation the stress on the assets would come down, and that's where I think the non-performing asset portfolio of the banks would start paying up. So to a greater extent, I think they would start seeing the bottom line performance getting positively affected. At the same time, if the rate of interest has to come down eventually because of the controlled inflation, then in such situation, once again, I think the treasury portfolio of the PSU banks particularly, I think would play to the advantage. Currently, most of the PSU banks, including some of the frontline banks, including SBI, they are quoting at a valuation sub 1.5 times price to book, and some of the best assets they are holding at this point of time. So to my mind, any new investor who wants to look at India and take an exposure in the country, probably they may want to see the depth in the market, and that's where I think you may find the leaders like SBI would probably play its role. In my mind, I think this is something which one will have to look at, that I think when new funds comes into the market, and if they are long only funds, which they are at this point of time investing in our markets, you would probably find such kind of rally continuing for many of the banking stocks. I would remain particularly bullish on SBI, BOB kind of banks within the PSU portfolio, apart from the private sector banks, which are 3 or 4 companies which are, I think, remaining at a valuation which is somewhere around 1.5 times to 1.8 times price to book.
Well, the one sector which really held up and made moves was definitely the cement pack as well. No index really to reflect the moves, but look at the individual movement on most of these stocks, be it in Ambuja, Ultratech, India Cements as well shot up a fair bit in Friday's session, ACC as well held out. So the entire sector made very robust moves. Sandeep, what's looking good for a trade in the cement sector?
Aisha, Ultratech and Ambuja have given a very clear breakout in the weekly charts. I think between the two, I would still choose an Ambuja. Maybe on a little bit of a decline, I would buy Ambuja. Don't see too much of a decline though. Very clear 7 to 8% trading upside is what I would talk of, given a week or two. And at a level of 217, I would keep a stop loss of say around a little below 210 and play for a target of 235 or so.
Even I want to get your thoughts in on the entire infrastructure and capital goods gamut, because that has seen a consistent performance as well of late, ever since the tilt from defensive came on to cyclicals. What is it that you're liking from the sector?
Well, Aisha, I think the mid-cap, the capital goods segment and the infrastructure companies coming into limelight at this point of time is largely also signaling that the market investors have returned with the kind of a risk appetite. And the promises are that I think if some of the infrastructure-led initiatives which has been talked about by BJP in their manifesto, and if they come into power and they start implementing them, then some of these infrastructure businesses would really start looking up very smartly. And that's where I think we have seen a larger amount of fund allotted to this particular space, and you have seen the actions into the stock prices. However, I think if one has to look at the companies, I find that I think in many of the infrastructure asset ownership companies, be it in the area of power sector or be it in the area of port sector, you find that the valuations are still not that expensive. On the contrary, I think even companies like Tata Power, even NTPC, even for that matter Adani Power, I think these companies are probably today trading at a per megawatt valuation which is far more lower compared to I think the new capacities if one would have to create into the power space. So from that perspective, I think they are available, I think, quite a discounted valuation. However, I think for them to succeed, certainly I think you require fewer linkages and certainly you require proper power price tariff mechanism. I think that given that kind of a possibility, I would think that I think the power sector companies in the generation space, including Tata Power, would remain I think a kind of a good choice to bet on. Along with the port business of Adani Port, with the Sagarmala project that has been talked about, I think could be natural beneficiary to the port business of this company. So I think one will have to select I think individual companies within the infrastructure portfolios, but some of these companies which we like are the likes of Tata Power, Adani Power and Adani Ports.
Sandeep, from this basket, I mean, Prakash Industries was a specific case, but the infra names did very well the whole of this week. Would you buy any going into next week, be it Reliance Infra, be it GMR, GVK, IRB, or some of the port companies?
I would wait for some bit of a correction. They have moved quite a bit. The best pattern is the Reliance Infra. I was very comfortable buying it, and in fact we had to buy it around 465 where it gave a breakout. It's already moved up 10% from there, so any move towards 480 or so, I would add on, I would buy. 480 to 460 is a level where I'm comfortable buying for a target of around 550, 560. Now this is not for a few days, but for the next few weeks.
David, the big one, Infosys, and especially the Friday shoot-up that we saw and the recovery in the names, what's it telling you?
Well, I think not generally the expectation starts building up ahead of results. To my mind, I think as we see Infosys right now, unless I think there is a major surge happening into the global economy, and unless I think they start getting a larger amount of ticket orders coming into them from the conventional business side as well as from the enterprise activity side, I think where the 1 billion plus ticket side orders start coming into Infosys, I don't see that Infosys breaking about 9 to 12% kind of a growth in 14-15 financial year. If they have to bring vertical growth above 14-15%, then in such situation I think currency also should support them. As we see in case of Infosys, I think every 1% movement in the currency has an impact of about 2% on the bottom line. So from that perspective, I think one will be very careful in watching this particular company, because if Indian rupee has to appreciate and go in the direction of 55-56 over a period of time, and even if we assume that I think the full year 14-15, the average value of rupee would be somewhere around 57-58, I think vis-a-vis the 60-62 kind of a calculation that one has done in the case of Infosys, I think the company will have to put in doubly more efforts to generate I think more than 12% to 14% kind of a growth. So one will keep an eye on this particular aspect. Another eye would be kept on the inorganic growth or the acquisition target that they spell out. And in such situation, I think complete change would be seen. But otherwise, I think one will be a little bit careful in watching the management commentary and take a call on this company.
Yes, we'll watch out for those. Sandeep, 4 large names, then there are mid caps, CMC, wherein expectations are of a muted growth or a Mindtree or a Persistent. Which IT stock would you watch out for?
Well, I'm looking at Hexaware as I've been mentioning earlier. The pattern wise, I like that in terms of a very clear breakout. It has almost closed at the high of the week, and I expect the move to continue towards 185 or so, currently at 170. I don't see that kind of a strength in any of the other IT space, other IT stock. Infosys, in fact, I'm looking at 100-150 points correction. So in that sense, I would not be comfortable. And I would say that what happened on Friday was a bounce back. And I don't expect that to last beyond 1% or 2%. So it can be only taken as a trading call.
What trading ideas could you execute come Tuesday morning? Devin, I'm going to start off with you first. Any stocks that you're liking which are good to go right now?
Well, I think since I'm not going to trade this particular stocks, I will put across I think investment grade ideas, where I believe that I think some of the companies which are looking fundamentally strong, I think one of them could be Bajaj Auto. The reasons are very specific for this company. I think in Maharashtra they have already got higher amount of permission for selling 3-wheelers, and I think this is one product portfolio which could drive performance I think in subsequent quarters as far as the margins and the profits are concerned. So that is one I think development which looks positive for Bajaj Auto. Of course, I think would like to consider buying at lower levels companies like Tata Motors and including Maruti, but I think they are more from the long-term investment point of view as well. Along with that, I think we like investment idea in case of Bajaj Finserv, this is one company where we believe that going forward, the growth would be, I think, quite significant, particularly coming out from the insurance business, and a good possibility that insurance business could get valued in the listed market space at some point of time. So I think would like to consider this company to add it to the portfolio. Maybe correction in the market would be a better opportunity to buy at little lower prices, but identifying these stocks and putting it across to investors so that at least one can get an opportunity when it is available during the correction in the markets.
Stay in for that. Sandeep, very quickly, your trading ideas for next week.
जब buy in a Shashun Pharma stop loss 82, target 101, a buy in a Atul Limited stop loss 470, target 515. These ideas are for the next couple of weeks.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining in, Deven as well as Sandeep, and for sharing your views as well. From Ash and myself and the team that put the show together, thanks so much for watching.